check this out. We got people in the audience. It's a snowy night. We're going ahead with this show. That's the way it is. Thank you for being the ones that are willing to step out in the... Well, Georgia's just saying she's got where she works. The bosses are coming out from Winnipeg this week to spend, and we're wondering why. Just so you can... Yeah, that's not winter. They know what winter is. But it's just the way it is. We live in the valley. We live in, it's January. Why would we expect anything less than snow like the rest of Canada? Yeah, but we got someone who's going to warm our hearts tonight and take us to the southern states, take us through all out the southern area of North America, just from all the people that he's worked with and all the stories he'll be telling you. He'll have in you thinking you're not even in Canada. But what we're going to do is this is a little switch I rigged up. I got 2 extra lights, by the way, which is kind of neat. Now it really looks like a theater does that whole thing, right? But I can do this. Doesn't that make it nicer? Yeah. I found the battery. It's a whole new size battery that I never knew existed. And but they make these things. I just don't know what they're doing. I just realized how far out of the present I am sometimes when I take a look at the stuff that they've created. And I was seeing something about an iPhone 11 on the TV and going like, why would you ever need to do all those things? But that's okay. That's the next generation. They can deal with it. We are the boomers. We left this mess. But anyway, we won't even get into those topics. But right now, what I want to do is say that David Vest is, this is our 3rd time where we had him at the 39 Days of July and it got rained out. Right? The only concert ever rained out at the festival was David Vest. He left and went back down and the rain stopped. And then we had another one planned for December this year. And the rain was coming down so hard at 4:30 in the afternoon. There was no way I was going to allow him to drive up here just to perform for us. It was just, to my mind, it was just a little bit too dangerous, especially around rush hour on a Friday, I think it was, in the traffic. Yeah, it was wind and everything. It just wasn't a pleasant day. And so today we decided we'd do this, and we started talking a couple of days ago. If you looked at the weather forecast, we're going to have snow. But he decided he wanted to come up anyway. We had a chat earlier on. He says, no, I can make it. They got a chicken place up there. I'll eat chicken. I'll be okay. That's that southern man in him, right? But anyway, he's here to give us an entertainment. It's going to be one long set tonight just so we can make it back down south. Down south. South to Victoria. You guys all ready for David Vest? Please, let's give him a warm welcome and get him to the stage.
I don't know if y'all have ever been backstage at the Duncan Showroom, but it's not entirely obvious how to get from the dressing room to the stage. And you know, a fella could roam around there for quite a while. I'd like to start out with a classic blues number by the great Memphis Slim. Every day I have the blues. Every day I have the blues. You see me worried, darling. You know it's you I hate to lose. Nobody loved me. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody loved me, nobody seemed to care. Speaking of bad luck and trouble, you know I've had my share. bag. I'm gonna move on down the line. I'm gonna pack my bag, move on down the line. You know there ain't nobody worried, sure ain't nobody crying. Every day I have the blues. Every day I have the blues, and every night too. When you see me worried, baby, know it's you I hate to lose. Thank you very much. Memphis Slim made enough money from that song to buy 4 Rolls Royces, a full-length mink coat, a house with piano keys leading up to the steps and the swimming pool in the backyard, and another apartment in downtown Paris. And a young blues lover from the States went over to France, where Memphis Slim was living, and wanted to track him down because he'd become a mysterious figure. Nobody had seen him in a while, you know. So he had this preconception of what blues people must be like, you know, like sort of like the homeless guys on the street in Victoria or something, you know. Maybe. So he looked around, he couldn't find Memphis Slim, and finally he ran into somebody that said, well, look, I'll set this up for you. You be on such and such a street corner at this time, and Memphis Slim will come by and talk to you. So he thought, man, this is even worse than I thought. I'm just going to stand on the street corner and hope he comes stumbling along on his way from one bar to another, or from the liquor store to the town dump or something. So he's standing out there looking at his watch, when around the corner comes the latest model of the largest Rolls Royce and stops right in front of him, and a guy wearing a full-length mink coat gets out of the car, comes around and offers him a hand encrusted with jewels and says, hello, young man, I'm Memphis Slim. What do you want to know? Not quite your image of the blues. Well, Memphis Slim, of course, is one of the greatest of blues piano players of all time, and he always paid tribute to the ones that had influenced him the most, including a fellow at a bar he couldn't remember the name of in Memphis. There was a piano player he couldn't remember the name of, except his name was Pee Wee, and Memphis Slim learned this song from him. It's called 4 in the Morning. From Memphis up to Chicago, he got there a little bit too late to really know the fellow that wrote Pine Top's Boogie Woogie. But all the other piano players in Chicago were telling him about Pine Top. They had known him personally, a fellow from down in South Alabama who had gone up to Chicago and only had like one or two recording sessions, and he recorded a song that he called Pine Top's Boogie Woogie, which sold 1 million copies. I think he recorded it in 1928, December, and it came out in 1929. And of course, if you've seen me before, you've probably heard me say that before he could record a follow-up, he was killed, victim of gun violence. He was actually shot by an audience member when he was on stage playing the piano. The guy wasn't trying to kill him. He was just drunk and, waving a gun around and being an idiot. But it's so much better now when they want to have everybody carry a gun everywhere they go. I know, I travel a lot, and I get on that plane, and I'd feel so much better if I thought everybody on that plane had a gun with them, and they were all like drinking those Bloody Marys at the. Anyway, all the piano players had to learn Pine Top's Boogie Woogie. Some play in different keys. A lot of people play it in G. I think it was originally recorded in C, which is where I'm going to play it tonight. And Pine Top's Boogie Woogie goes like this. That's Pine Top's Boogie Woogie, and one of Pine Top's acquaintances, also from Alabama, was Mr. Charles Davenport, sometimes known as Cow Cow Davenport, because he'd written a song called the Cow Cow. He called it the Cow Cow Blues. Other people insisted on calling it the Cow Cow Boogie. He wrote this sometime in the 1920s, and it later had words added to it and became a song popularized by Ray Charles under the title "The Mess Around," but it's really just Cow Cow Davenport's song. And it had all sorts of stuff in it which was to sort of imitate the power and the rhythm of locomotives, because those were big deals. It was the noisiest thing that you could hear on the planet Earth was a locomotive at that time, and that's probably why guitar players loved them so much. But the piano players were the ones that worked in the turpentine camps to entertain the workers and encourage them to spend their money on booze before they went home and gave it to their wives. And so these things were all located right beside the railroad track, so the piano players heard a lot of trains and rode a lot of trains from one gig to another. And so maybe the cow part has something to do with the cattle catcher on front of the locomotive. Nobody's really quite sure. That's my theory. It went something like this. I say all this by way of leading up to one of my own songs, which was based on the same boogie-woogie train sound idea. Songs are not always based in reality. Sometimes they're actually true. The band and I were riding in a van to a gig in a small town in Alberta, one of these little towns where the railroad track runs right down the middle of Main Street, or in the median strip maybe. and there was a train coming that night, and the drummer said, the drummer was driving. He said, I can beat that train. And of course, we would not have beat the train. We managed to talk him out of it physically, take the wheel away from him. And it was pretty scary, but we did get a song out of it that I recorded on one of my albums. I've got some of the albums over here tonight, if you want to take some home with you after the show, because you got to really figure out, not only is it snowing tonight, but you got an amazing coincidence. You've got David Vest and David Vest CDs in the same building. That doesn't always happen, because sometimes I forget to bring them. Anyway, here's a little song about a freight train called Freight Train Rollin'. rolling right through the heart of town. A freight train rolling right through the heart of town. Well, it's picking up speed, boys, it ain't slowing down. And when you hear that whistle blow, you better clear the track. When you hear that whistle, man, you better clear the track. With that big train rolling, it ain't coming back. If I flag your train, mama, would you let me ride? If I flag your train, pretty baby, would you let me ride? There's an old showroom down the corner we can duck inside. Roll across the water, just rocking from a side to side. You know we roll across the water, just rocking from a side to side. Oh, you know there's gonna be some shaking going on tonight. There's a freight train rolling, 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 rolling on down the line. Now, the secret to playing the piano is like the secret to a lot of things. There's a trick, especially when you've got this hand doing one thing and this hand doing something completely different, off in different directions at the same time. I mean, you know, you've tried to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time, and you know, there's people that can do that and juggle with their feet at the same time. But the trick is to get out of the way. Because if I get in the way and I start thinking about what I'm playing, all of a sudden it becomes too complicated. Just get out of the way. And in fact, someone was telling me that he saw a documentary about the opera singer, what was his name? Luciano Pavarotti? Pavarotti, not poverty. Luciano Pavarotti, that's me. No, Pavarotti was down at the end of the hall in a dressing room. So they got the camera, they're going down the hall, they're going to go in and we're going to actually see and talk to Luciano Pavarotti. And they get there, and the door's cracked open, and Pavarotti is walking back and forth in the dressing room, muttering something. So they get close enough to hear what he's saying, and what he's saying to himself is, just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. It's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about your great voice. It's about these songs. It's about this music. Just get out of the way. So I left myself backstage because the real me couldn't figure out how to get up here. So I just came on out here and out of my own way. At this time, I'm going to go over to that other piano. Watch, you'll miss this. Excuse me. This is one of those scary pianos where you see yourself in the mirror. You know, you're looking out at your hands playing. You're remembering the words, you're relating to the people, and you turn around and there you are. And the first thing that comes to your mind when you see yourself in a mirror like this is, who did this to you? Last time I looked at you, you were 19. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, 19. That was at least 15 years ago, okay? Anyway, I like this piano because it reminds me of the one that my grandmother bought for me when I was 11 or 12 years old, maybe a little earlier. She paid $50 for it, put it on layaway and paid a little bit every week. And when they delivered it as a big surprise, it was also a surprise to my father, who didn't know it was coming. And that piano was bigger than this one and a good deal heavier, so that when they brought it up onto the front porch, it just went through the planks on the front porch, down about 2 feet, and just sort of dangled there. Well, my dad just did this. And he had to go get some friends and rig up some kind of harness and hoist it up and get it on in the house and try not to tear up the hardwood floors with it, lean it against the wall. It was nothing but trouble for him, but yet that same piano, years later when I started playing professionally, he would put it onto the back of a pickup truck and carry it around to the shows. If I came to a place like this that didn't have a piano, he would bring it. It would be up here when I got here. And then while I was meeting people and being patted on the back and so forth, he and sometimes one of his friends would load it back onto the truck and take it back home. My dad did that for me many times. And of course, any musician has got somebody like that they could talk about. I'm going to try to play a real old-fashioned kind of boogie-woogie on this piano. The kind, maybe this is the first thing you ever heard and associated with boogie-woogie. It's a thing that goes like this. about the time I was actually playing the thing and not just staring at it, you know, when you first get a piano and you don't have any teacher or anything, you don't know what you're doing. First thing you learn to do is you learn how to sneak up on the piano. You can't let it know you're coming, right? You got to kind of sneak up on it. And then later you get familiar enough with it that you can kind of pound it and bang on it a bit and do this stuff. I call that the Irving Berlin boogie because it uses only black notes in the key of F sharp, and that's the only key Irving Berlin could play in. He wrote I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas on the black notes. Anyway, we were living in this duplex, and my dad had put the piano right up against the wall that connected us to the lady on the other side who lived alone there. And she was pretty good about letting me bang away before she started banging on the wall, signaling to me that she had heard enough for that day. You know, she sort of treated that the way my dad would have treated the television if we'd had one. He'd bang on it till the picture came in, you know. So I'd be trying to play maybe something like Jerry Lee Lewis, like a whole lot of shaking going on. I'd be trying to play it like this. Because I knew that was the chord, and I knew those were the notes, but what else you did, I didn't have a clue. And you'd probably not only be banging the wall, you'd be climbing the wall after about half an hour of that, wouldn't you? Coming right into your living room where you're trying to do your lace work, you know, your tatting or your embroidery. I didn't realize at that point that you could just break those notes up, you know. And that what he was doing was singing and playing an old song that he had heard at a juke joint called Haney's Big House that he had snuck into as a child, hid under the tables or behind the bar, behind a curtain, listening to the music, trying to figure it out. And he surely heard somebody singing this song. You might have heard Big Mama Thornton sing it because she recorded it before he did. He might have heard a lot of blues singers doing some version or another of this song. And of course, he added his own little bit to it, as everybody else does. Come along, baby, a whole lot of shaking going on. Come along, baby, baby, you can't go wrong. We ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on. Now, I'm sure when he first heard this, there was a room full of dancers. Come on over, baby, we got chicken in the corner. Come along, baby, really got the bull by the horn. Ain't nobody faking, whole lot of shaking going on. Well, I said shake, baby, shake. Shake, baby, shake. Shake, baby, shake. Shake, baby, shake. Ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on. Don't try that at home. And don't try it on stage unless you've practiced it at home, so don't ever do it. The first time I actually did it in public wasn't on that song, it was something else. I just decided that one of those things, one of those slides that we hillbillies call them, glissandos as Pavarotti would have called it, I decided it would work pretty good at a place, mainly because the piano I was playing on that day was so bad that every time you hit a note, it went down and stayed down. You got to use it one time. It just went down and stayed down. So if you did this, you had a whole bunch of keys just. Now you could pick them back up one at a time and use them again. So I wasn't having a lot of luck actually playing notes on this thing. So I decided I would try this. But I hadn't practiced enough, and I did it a little too enthusiastically. And there was a lady in the third row, right out in front of the piano, who had on a white blouse. And I remember she had some kind of flower brooch or something. I believe it was a flower up here. And she was sitting and enjoying the show until my bloody fingernail landed on her white blouse. I tore the whole fingernail off. I kind of yelped, and she looked down and screamed. And that's how screaming at rock and roll singers started. So I figured maybe that's the best way to leave than going down there. You can really hurt yourself doing that if you don't know it. Of course, in show business, we know all kind of fancy ways to do it. Liberace's last public appearance on television, he played, but shortly before he died, he played I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas, and he played it in the key of A flat so that he could do this. Run right down the black notes. I'm going to move back over here for a minute. At my age, I like to stand up every now and then to demonstrate that I still can, to myself and to others. If you never know anything else about blues music, I would like for everyone to know where it came from. We all know, of course, that blues and jazz were developed in the African American communities down south. And the point of saying that is that these high forms of art came from the bottom of society. It was the people who had the least who contributed the most to our cultural life in the U.S. and elsewhere around the world. And just knowing that these astounding art forms, which never existed before, were created by people who come out of these circumstances, causes us all to look at those who have the least today in a different way. What could they be contributing if they had the chance? Rain so hard, rain both night and day. You know it rains so hard, people. Rain both night and day. A lot of poor folks saw everything they had in the world floating away. Backwater blues had 'em all my life. Backwater blues, you know I had them all my life. And sometime I wonder, when am I gonna see the light? Rolling down that highway, trying to make the gig on time. Rolling down that highway, just trying to make the gig on time. Well, I love to play the music, sure to miss that little gal of mine. Rolling down that highway, feel like my time is getting gone. Just rolling down that highway, feel like my time is getting gone. Don't you know, sometime make me wonder just what trip I'm even on. Rolling down that highway, oh, lonesome sun is going down. And I'm rolling down that highway, oh, lonesome sun is going down. But I just keep on rolling on down to one more lonesome town. That's so sad, I'm gonna have to drink a glass of water. It was W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, who told us Never mistake the blues for music that's trying to bring you down. The blues is music that lifts you back up when you've been knocked down. It's life that knocks us down, and the blues that lifts us back up. To play you a W.C. Handy stolen composition. W.C. Handy wrote lots of original music, but he also rearranged and recomposed and copyrighted things that he found out in the field. In other words, melodies that other people had created. You can say this about Handy: he improved almost everything he touched. Some people hold it against him that he was claiming other people's work as his own. Others give him credit for presenting this music to the world so that we could all hear it and enjoy it, because if not for him, we might never have heard these songs. And this is a song called The Hesitating Blues. And the hesitating part comes from this little melodic thing near the beginning of each verse. And so when he wrote words for it, or when different people wrote words for it, they turned it into a love song about somebody that won't name the date for when we're going to get married. You say we're going to get married, but when? How long must I wait? Why do you hesitate? What have you learned about me that I didn't want you to find out? And why can't you love me like you did before you even met me? Questions, profound questions like this. This is, without doing any of the words, W.C. Handy's version of the Hesitating Blues. Couple that with one that Handy didn't find out in the field. He created this entirely by himself. It's called the Yellow Dog Blues. Yellow Dog Blues. The Yellow Dog line is, of course, a railroad line. As says in the words of the song, down where the Southern crossed the Yellow Dog. I've never been on the Yellow Dog line. I have seen, I've been to Santa Fe, which is the one I have in mind associated with railroading is not in Arizona or New Mexico, but in Texas. Southwest of Houston, there's a town called Santa Fe, and there was a neighborhood in Houston, the Fourth Ward, where trains with things like Santa Fe on the side, you know, the boxcars, and Frisco line, Santa Fe line, all that stuff would come by. And so the piano players in that neighborhood would do something like this. Well, that mean old Southern, low down Santa Fe. Yeah, that mean old Southern, low down Santa Fe. You know it took my baby and it blowed smoke back at me. Gonna leave here, baby, gone a long, long time. When I leave here, baby, I'll be gone a long, long time. You'll see the last of me smoking down the railroad line. Santa Fe. That mean old Frisco, that low down Santa Fe. Took my baby away, blow the blue smoke back at me. I have not coughed in a month since I got on stage tonight. Maybe I shouldn't have left myself back in the dressing room. You know, I think the fellow that runs sound here always does a tremendous job. If it sounds all right, give that young man up there a hand. Otherwise, I'll have to tip him. You know, sometimes songs get written by different people over generations. Like, you know, everybody will add a little bit to it or change the story in a different way. Like the many versions of the song about that bad man Stagger Lee. Of course, everybody knows the great hit recording of it by Lloyd Price out of New Orleans. Lloyd Price was the same man who did the original version of Lordy Miss Claudia with Fats Domino on the piano. And he had a huge hit with, sorry, with Staggered Lee, where, night was clear and the moon was yellow and the leaves came tumbling down. And so you tell a little story about, you're out walking your dog, and the dog barks because there's something going on down at the corner, and there's some kind of gambling going on, and you overhear this argument, and this fellow Stagger Lee is getting into it with a guy who's usually identified as Billy Lyons, or sometimes just Lion Billy or Billy the Liar. But Billy Lyons has won Stagger Lee's money, and he's even won his hat, his Stetson hat. And so Stagger Lee's not going to stand for this. He's mad about it. He figures that he had to be cheating. He goes home, and his poor wife's terrified of him. He's a bad man, and he says, "Where's my gun?" And he gets his gun, and he says, "Billy Lyon's going to be down at the bar." And he goes down to the bar, and usually, it goes something like this. Stagger Lee went to the barroom, Lord, he bust in through the door. Said, "Don't nobody move," then he pulled that 44. Stagger Lee, cried Billy Lyon, "Honey, please don't take my life. I got 3 poor children and a very sickly wife." Now here's the verse I added. Stagger Lee told Billy Lyon, "Oh, don't you lie to me. You ain't seen them children since 1963. Stagger Lee shot Billy Lyon, shot that boy so bad. But Billy went through Billy and he broke the bartender's glass. Now I'm playing a New Orleans version of the song done by a piano player named Archibald. That's all I know about him, is his name's Archibald. He had a Stagger Lee Part 1 and Part 2 where he did this. Version of the song, you can't just have Stagger Lee shoot Billy, break the bartender's glass. You can't just have the police come and put Stagger Lee in jail. You got to have the funeral and the second line and all the dancing in the streets and all that. Now when the ladies down in the quarter heard that Billy Lyons was dead, some come dressed in scarlet and some come dressed in red. Now when the police came, the bartender, he was hiding under the shelf. Said, "If you want Mr. Stagg, you're gonna have to go get him by yourself." Well, we got the death and the arrest and the funeral. What about the afterlife? The police can't find Stagger Lee to arrest him on earth. He broke out of jail. So they send a U.S. Marshal down to hell with instructions to go down there and get Stagger Lee. But he gets down there and he makes an appointment with the devil. And apparently it's pretty easy to get in to see. But it turns out that in the New Orleans version of it that Dr. John used to sing, Stagger Lee is such a bad man, he's gone down, he's overthrown Satan, he's kind of taken over hell. And that version about how scared the bartender was gets applied to the devil. When the police came, they found the devil hiding on a devil shelf. Said, if you want Mr. Stagg, you're gonna have to get him by yourself. Another song that underwent the same process is the one associated with Leadbelly, Irene Goodnight. Last Saturday night, I got married. Me and my wife settled down. Now me and my wife have parted. Think I'll take another stroll downtown. But probably in the original version, Irene is not the wife. Irene is the working girl that he had to give up to get married. So he and his wife settle down, and he gets to thinking about that gal Irene. Think I'll take another stroll downtown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you every night in my dreams. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I take a great notion. Might as well lend a name to a Ken Casey novel while you're writing a song. Sometimes I take a great notion, sometimes a great notion, to jump in the river and drown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night. Let me go back to Memphis Slim for a minute, because one of the most interesting things about Memphis Slim, to me, is that never in his life did he record, or to my knowledge perform, under his own given name. His given name was John Lynn Chapman. He was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I think he was the youngest in a large family. His mother's name, his dad's name was Peter Chapman, and Mr. Chapman was well versed in music, had been a musician and band leader himself, and so was in a position to give guidance, career guidance, and places to avoid, and watch out for this guy, he's a crook, and that sort of thing. But Memphis Slim's mother, Ella, died when he was 2. And sometimes he would say, "I'm Memphis Slim, Ella Chapman's baby boy." And he would say that with a lot of feeling, and now you know why. When he left Memphis, he did a lot of hoboing around, playing different places, playing in different bands. But he went up north and had a chance to record. He didn't record under the name John Lynn Chapman or John Chapman. He recorded under his father's name. He said later it was he wanted to pay tribute to his dad, who had gone on after the mom had died and kept the family together and worked and raised the kids alone. And he wanted his father's name to be on a recording. And he made several recordings like this. And then he got a job playing as a sideman and accompanist to a legendary blues singer named Big Bill Brunsey. Now, Big Bill Brunsey, you go back in history and read all the history of the blues, he was the guy, he, Key to the Highway comes from him. All by Myself comes from him. Don't need nobody to help me, I'll do it all by myself. And Memphis Slim recorded some playing with him, but when he got a really good record deal, the record company decided he needed a marketable nickname. The music business has always been big about stage names. Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Satchmo, Bob Dylan. Robert Zimmerman made that name up for himself. Seems to be working so far. But the record company decided to call, they had a little conversation with Memphis Slim, trying to figure out if he had a nickname or something. And, nobody called him Memphis Slim then. So they said Memphis Slim was 6'5" or 6'6", 6 feet 6 inches tall, maybe. Possibly 6'5", one or the other. Pretty tall guy, a good deal taller than I am. So when he had this conversation with the record company, they said, what did your family call you? They didn't call you by your father's name. What did they call you? Well, my brother calls me Shorty. So they weren't going to market this 6'6" guy as Shorty. Although later a guy that was just about 6 feet tall got marketed as Little Richard. And they had to dress him in baggy suits that, were too long and too big for him so that he would look small in them and be little. They decided they couldn't call him Shorty, so they would just call him Memphis Slim. And so this was a name that was just sort of given to him by a record company. He really didn't have a lot to say about it. This sometimes happens in show business. It happened to my old friend Tammy Wynette is the name you know her by, but her name was Wynette Bird when I knew her and palled around with her. And when she got up to Nashville and got her record deal, they said, "What are we going to call you?" She said, "Well, how about calling me by my name?" And then somebody, I can just hear the conversation in the you know, because I've been there in that music business. You know, I've lived in Nashville for a while, and I know how that works. And some executive will say, "There, Wynette, what kind of a damn name is that? That's not even a name." And she said, "Well, it's my name." "Well, you can't be Wynette or Wynette, and you can't be Bird." So there was a popular movie Debbie Reynolds was in called Tammy and the Preacher or something like that. So they decided she'd be a Tammy, and then they let her keep the Wynette or the Wynette as the last name. So it was very generous of them to let her keep part of her name, and after informing her that from now on she was Tammy. I really don't know how she felt about that. But anyway, it happened to Memphis Slim too. The thing about nicknames in the blues, you know, there's Guitar Shorty, there's Louisiana Red, Fats Domino, Muddy Waters. They don't work if you give them to yourself. You can't just sit at home, you know, in your bedroom thinking of names for yourself, for the most part, because everybody can tell that you made it up. But if it's something that other people have called you, and you can stand it and it sticks. So my nickname is Hey You. Anyway, a piano player that Memphis Slim's father had known was the biggest influence on Memphis Slim. It was a piano player named Roosevelt Sykes. And, you know, blues piano that we can trace doesn't go back all that far. I mean, the earliest ones that we have recordings of, these were people born in about 1899, 1905. I think Roosevelt Sykes and Big Maceo Merriweather might have been born in 1905. The most famous piano player before then was a fellow named Leroy Carr. And of course, he had written one of the greatest of all blues piano songs that went something like this. How long has that evening train been gone? How long, baby, how long? And then the song went on to talk about how long am I going to have to live the way I'm living? How long am I going to have to keep my clothes in pawn? How long, baby, how long? If I could holler like a one-eyed mountain jack, I'd go way up on the hill, try to call my baby back. So long, baby, how long? And to everyone who heard this song on records or radio, or heard him play it, they begin to hear, how long are we going to have to wait for our freedom? How long are we going to have to wait for voting rights? How long are we going to have to wait to be treated with respect? How long is this ridiculous nonsense going to go on that we're subjected to. So after Leroy Carr, the two great piano players that would have influenced blues piano playing were Big Maceo Merriweather, who wrote the Worried Life Blues. Might as well show a little of that. Oh, Lordy, Lord. Oh, Lordy, Lord. It hurts so much for us to part. But someday, baby, you ain't gonna worry my life anymore. And many different versions of that song, using that concept. Someday you ain't gonna worry me anymore. Have been done. Muddy Waters called it Trouble No More. I don't care where you go, I don't care where you stay. Good kind treatment bring you back someday. Someday, baby, you ain't gonna worry my life anymore. And when Bob Dylan took it, he did it this way. You can take your clothes, put them in a sack. You're going down the road, baby, and you can't come back. Someday, baby, you ain't gonna worry poor me anymore. Now, but Roosevelt Sykes did know about an older piano player that Memphis Slim would have had no other access to, who came out of New Orleans and who had been a friend of a very young Jelly Roll Morton. This would be the 19-teens. And this was a fellow named Little Brother Montgomery. And he had developed a thing on the piano and the idea for a song. And someone else had heard him do it and recorded it before he could. And when he recorded it, he called it the Vicksburg Blues. But when Roosevelt Sykes recorded it, he called it the 44 Blues. And he taught this to Memphis Slim, later recorded by many blues artists. And the original version was something like this. Walked all night long with my 44 by my side. I walked all night long with my 44 by my side. Well, I'm trying to find that in its original version, the song is about coincidence. Not just carrying a 44 gun around, but the number 44 train that wouldn't let me ride, or that finally let me ride, depending on the version. The evil that the man did with the 44, killing his wife and her lover, and then being trapped by the police in little cabin number 44, and then being in cell number 44. And it was all about how, what you do comes around and catches up with you. And these numbers should have told me, But by the time Howlin' Wolf did it and the other Chicago Electric Blues men, it was all about the gun and the swagger. I wore my 44 so long, made my shoulders sore. 44 so long, made my shoulders sore. So by the time Memphis Slim got to Chicago and met Big Bill Broonzy, his big ambition was to sound as much as possible like Roosevelt Sykes, his hero, because, when you're a young man and you get to meet a real blues legend and study with him and he pays attention to you and shows you how to do stuff, that's pretty important to you. But Big Bill Broonzy said, you'll never get anywhere sounding like Roosevelt Sykes. We've already got a Roosevelt Sykes. What do you sound like? And I think that's a message that, he encouraged him to find his own style, his own voice. And boy, did he. And it was a voice that could comment on anything from within the blues during the late 60s. Everybody talking about Chicago 7. 4 dead in Ohio, that makes 11. Nobody talking about the black blood that got spilled. They didn't pay no attention to some of their own got killed. Sing that again. Everybody talking about the Chicago 7. 4 in Ohio, that makes 11. I don't hear nobody talking about all the black blood being spilled. They don't want to know nothing about it. Some of their own got killed. At the time Memphis Slim moved to Paris, which is around 1960 or shortly thereafter, he had gone over on a tour with Willie Dixon and some other blues artists, and he'd been treated rather well in Europe compared to the way he'd been treated all his life in his own country. And the great bassist and songwriter Willie Dixon, who wrote Whang Dang Doodle and all those other songs, he put it this way. In the United States, in Chicago, blues was pretty big and we were stars. we were such big stars that we could go out on Friday night and make $20. So Memphis Slim goes to Europe and has thousands of people hearing him in a theater or in a swanky club and giving him money to buy a Rolls Royce with. I mean, I just don't understand how you could give up $20 on Friday for that. But he did. So he just pretty much stayed there. He came back to do an occasional tour appearance at festivals. He played at I think the Monterey Jazz Festival in the late '60s, and he would come and play a Chicago Blues Festival, or came to Memphis toward the end of his life and played again. But he was an expatriate, which, being an expatriate myself, living in Canada, you know, I wonder what would have been the scene if Memphis Slim had, by some strange circumstances, toured Canada before he toured Europe. You know, he might have come up here to stay, as other great blues artists have done. As Ronnie Hawkins out of Arkansas did, still here. As Van Piano Man Walls, who was the session man for Atlantic Records and played on most of Big Joe Turner's hits. He settled in Montreal. They asked him, "Why did you leave the U.S. and come to Canada?" And his answer was short and simple. It was the freedom. I wanted more freedom. So he followed that up here, and most of us who've made our home in Canada came up here. You know, we've stayed. We're hard to get rid of. We're like, you know, you're stuck with us. Thank you. I like to say I wasn't born here, but I got here as quick as I heard about it. And I do want to thank Longevity John for giving me a warm introduction tonight, but you know, he left out some stuff. John, I hope you're listening. Make notes now. He neglected to tell you that I am Canada's oldest living promising young pianist. Nobody else is even close. I had a chance to sit in with my friends in the, well, I consider them the world's greatest blues band, the Downchild Blues Band, when they came through Vancouver Island back in the fall in Victoria, because they had recorded one of my songs. And you know, if you're a songwriter, you know, if you wrote folk songs, maybe you would dream of hearing Pete Seeger or Joan Baez sing that song, or Judy Collins maybe. And if you were a country songwriter, maybe you'd want, you know, to hear Hank Williams sing it, or Kitty Wells, or coming to the modern era, maybe you want Jason Isbell to sing it. But if you write blues songs, you want the great blues artists to do them, and I was so thrilled when Downchild did my song, Worried About the World. I was so excited that I wrote 5 or 6 different alternate lyric versions of it, and almost created so much confusion they didn't do it. Like, which of these are the damn words? But it's a song that originally was given to me by a homeless person. I heard somebody sitting on the curb as I was walking by one day, just muttering to himself, and he said, "Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me." And sometimes we can be so upset and worried about what's going on with the planet and the great nations of the earth colliding and all that, and the drama over that, that we miss the small things, individual people that just might need a cup of soup. The guy that doesn't have a coat or a place to sleep tonight. And I know we're all doing what we can in those areas, but that's what originally inspired this song, was hearing that guy say that. And so I'm attracted to people that might be slightly mentally ill, going down the street muttering stuff, Maybe the guy that gets on the bus and starts shouting at no one, I once saw one of those fellows, he got on a train, a light rail train, and he was shouting, and there was an elegantly dressed lady who, when she spoke, sounded exactly like Sir John Gielgud. And he shouted something and stopped and looked at her, and she said, "My dear fellow, have you tried Prozac?" Anyway, so I just imagined maybe this same guy or somebody like him, stuff they might say on one of their rambles, trying to make sense of a baffling world. And that's where the lyrics came from. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Well, they're dropping that bread over yonder, way over across the sea. Sometime I wonder why they can't drop a little bread on me. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Yeah, they blowing up them buildings, y'all, mailing that poison mail. Right here we got innocent people rotting at the bottom of the jail. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Rotting at the bottom of the jail for the crime of being homeless. You don't even have to be homeless. You can just like be a grandmother and a granddaughter trying to open a bank account and wind up in handcuffs because you don't look like you would have any money. Songwriters just go right on writing songs, adding to them. Sometimes if you go see Bob Dylan these days, he's got a whole new set of lyrics to Tangled Up in Blue because he's still writing it. And after Downchild recorded Word About the World, I wrote some more words to it. Well, I'm an easy-going fella, but it puts me in a rage just to turn on my television, see him putting children in a cage. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Everybody worried about the world, nobody worried about me. Ba, 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 ba. In one of my favorite short stories by one of my favorite Mississippi writers, Miss Eudora Welty, who was also a wonderful photographer. If you've never read anything by Eudora Welty, I congratulate you on all the fun you're going to have if you actually go home and look her up. And she mainly wrote short stories. And she wrote a story where there's a character, an old woman named Phoenix Jackson, who can't quite remember what's going on or why she's walking to town. But she says things like, well, she crosses a little creek. There's a little log to walk on. You have to balance and go across the creek. And she's balancing on this log, and she looks down and she says, "Sleep on, alligators, blow your bubbles." And when she's out walking before daylight, she sees the houses where people are not up yet, and she says, "I walking in they sleep." But toward the end of one of the stories she appears in, she says, "The time getting all gone here." And that's true for us too. I've got another song I'm going to play for you. And then if anybody wants to come over there and buy a CD, or you just come over there and say hello. You don't have to buy a CD to say hello. I won't bite you. I didn't guarantee that. You know how us musicians are. But anyway, this is my country song. This is a song about imagine a guy who's been a little reckless and foolish, and he goes into the washroom one day and he's going to shave, and he looks at himself in the mirror and he says, "Boy, you've gone too far this time." And whatever he's done that's affecting his relationship, well, you can put it together for yourself. You've gone too far this time. You stepped right over that line. You must have been out of your mind, boy. You've gone too far this time. That woman was good to you. She did everything she could do, but you made her lonely and blue. She was so good to you. Don't try to tell me you didn't know what you were doing. You were grinning and barreling right down the road to ruin. She's leaving and she won't be back. She's all through cutting you slack, Jack. She's moving on down the line, 'cause you've gone too far this time. Don't try to tell me you didn't know what you were doing. You were grinning and barreling right down the road to ruin. It's no use crying now. Nobody's listening anyhow. She's moving on down the line, 'cause you've gone too far this time. Thank you so much for coming out on a snowy evening. I'm going to go backstage for just a second, and I'll be right over there in a minute. Thanks.
There's a woman rolling quarters on a table, a gentleman taking tickets at the door, and I'm slipping out tonight 'cause the moon is yellow bright, and I'm afraid that I don't love her anymore. I heard a song come on a speaker. It said something about slipping out the back or making a new plan. Some guy named Stan. I said, thank you, Paul, for keeping me on my track. I wish it was 1930 at the old Kentucky Derby, and I was riding White Lightning off the bluff. 'Cause I need a racehorse and some old rusty spurs, 'cause I can't get away from her fast enough. Yeah. There's a woman stacking euro on a table, and a man chopping wood outside the door. She said every room is sold, so I slept out in the cold, and it occurred to me I never slept better before. I found the perfect dirty barroom, full of liars, cheats, and losers all around. Well, I said, gentlemen, hold your pistols. I'm just here to wet my whistle and forget that woman I left back in town. I wish it was 1930 at the old Kentucky Derby, and I was riding White Lightning off the bluff. I need a racehorse and some old rusty spurs, 'cause I can't get away from her fast enough. Tell yourself a lie so many times you convince yourself that it's true. Well, I don't regret a single thing in my life, but I curse the day that I ran into you. I wish it was 1930 at the old Kentucky Derby, and I was riding White Lightning real rough. I need a racehorse and some old rusty spurs.